This is Stacy, the host of Jiu Jitsu's podcast. I need to disclaim before this episode that Coach Vince and I, in our conversation with each other, we use lots of filler words in the course of our conversation. I have spent some time trying to edit out as many as I am technologically skilled at editing out. However, there are still several instances of filler words being used in this episode. So unfortunately, if people using filler words is irritating to you, you may not be able to listen to this episode. However, if filler words are something that you are able to get past and listen to the content of the message that we are talking about, then enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome to the Jiu Jitsu podcast. My name is Stacy, I am a Jiu Jitsu, and this is my podcast. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down and chatting with my friend and training partner, Vince Samartano. In this conversation, you will hear us discussing starting jiu-jitsu at a young age, as a child or a teen, and the development of the person through the jiu-jitsu philosophy, as well as other aspects of jiu-jitsu that the children go through, like competition and the class structure and things like that. We also discuss what are the benefits of starting jiu-jitsu from a young age, why jiu-jitsu is good for children, and just kind of our own experiences of coaching the children, observing the children, and just various things like that. I had a really great time chatting with Vince today, and I hope that you enjoy our conversation. Hi everyone, welcome back. I am sitting here with the one, the only, Coach Vince!
Hello there.
Hi, how are you?
Doing absolutely amazing, Stace. How are you?
Good, I'm fantastic. So can you please introduce yourself to the podcast listeners?
Of course, yeah. My name's Vince. I am a blue belt at our gym, Grace Downers Grove. I am the current lead kids coach and also an assistant instructor for adults as well. I'm also the project manager for both Downers Grove location and the East Naperville as well.
Yeah, you're a busy guy.
Indeed.
You wear many hats.
Many hats that I love to wear.
So you mentioned that you are the main kids coach for our school.
Yes.
Now you've been training for
5 years.
For 5 years, for a number of years. Can you kind of describe, like, how did you get into jiu-jitsu in the first place?
Yeah, so I've been wrestling since I was a little kid, and I was actually the one that was always the one on the mats. Like, you had to extra motivate, you had to get me up because I didn't want to do anything, all that. And then one day I just looked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I kept on seeing it everywhere. And I just saw how interesting it was, especially from a self-defense standpoint of, like, yeah, wrestling's great. You could take somebody down, you learn how to control somebody, but to actually, like, understand how to apply pressure on somebody and keep them down or submit them until whatever point that interested me so much, I felt like it was a part of grappling that I was missing out on and that I needed to explore. So I looked up jiu-jitsu schools around me, and then it was the first school that popped up, and I ran into Professor Carlos walking into the school, and I was like, oh, how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? He was like, oh, like 30-something years. And I was like, oh, God, okay. So that's kind of how I found out about the school, and then here we are now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's kind of funny. How long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? Like, my whole life.
I was like, oh.
Oh, my gosh. So how old were you when you started, if you don't mind?
I was 16 when I first started.
16, okay. And then did you go through the teens program?
So the teens program cuts off at 16. So when you turn 16, they consider you an adult. So you're in the teens and adult class. Mm-hmm. So I've been in the quote-unquote adults program since I was 16. Mm-hmm. It was very, very interesting just because I was always the youngest in the group. Mm-hmm. There's always these older guys around me and more experienced people in life and jiu-jitsu and everything. Mm-hmm. But I really, really enjoyed it, you know, like, especially being the young guy. I think in environment, especially if you have more older, experienced people and they see the young guy that's really involved and they invest time in it. And I think I learned a lot of how I am now, just being surrounded by all those people being so young.
Well, and then, so you got started when you were kind of like mid-teens, but now that you are the main kids coach, are you also like the kids and teens coach?
Yeah, correct. So in the teens and kids coach, you'll see like I lead the class for the 3 to 6 year olds, and then also for the 7 to 10, and then when it gets to the teens and adult class, as I said, I assist the adult class, which is in the teens with there, but they kind of trust me to lead the teens and everything, along with me and Coach Joey as well.
Yeah. And now Coach Joey, this is a relatively recent development.
Yes.
How excited are you about that?
Unbelievably, man. This young man, Joey, I've been training him since I was a white belt. I remember he was in the little kids program when I started first coach, and now to see him now, he's 13 years old, and just like I said earlier, it's about like the environment you're being surrounded by and the people that shape you in the environment. And man, even him from even 2 years ago, he's completely changed. Just being around myself, Professor Carlos, Professor Pedraca, Coach Alex, all these positive influences around him, and especially at that age, he's like a sponge. And us having knowledge of that, we want to make sure we push the positive things on him, make him aware of the negative things. But it's like we always say, it's standing on the shoulder of giants, right? It's like, for example, Professor Carlos had to travel around the world and go to all these places, open up schools, and we don't have to do that because now we're standing on shoulders of giants. So I think that's the same way with Joey, where he has all of us that have went through different types of things, and from that he's able to grow even bigger than us because of what he's around. So he's definitely a very, very he's what I would say, if you do jiu-jitsu and you start as a little kid and you really dedicate and commit yourself to it, that is the exact product that turns out.
And that's like, my heart is just so full, like, and I just have so much pride, like I'm so proud of him, and like also of like how our programs have developed to be able to nurture that in our children, and because now he's gone through the program for a number of years now, from a child, now he's a young teen, and look at how like what kind of a leader he's becoming, like, oh man.
He is, man. Like we even have, he just turned 13 years old. He's very, very young, and he helps me with all the kids classes and coaches and everything. And I was talking to this guy. He came, sat down and observed with his 3-year-old son. And after I called him on the phone, and I was like, hey, what do you think of the class and everything? And I brought up Coach Joey, and he was like, man, he's like, that kid's 13. He was like, I was about ready to buy that guy a drink. It's like, it's crazy to see. Again, it goes back to like, you become what you surround yourself with, and the environment that shapes you, and that really is proof in the pudding. It's like, man, you see someone who's never seen Coach Joey before, see how he holds himself, his confidence that he walks around with, how he speaks, how he acts, how he reacts to the kids and everything is truly amazing. Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're trying to foster in the children and teens that come to us, So can you talk a little bit about what benefits are there to starting jiu-jitsu as a child or even a young teen? Like, not just from your own experience, but also because you work so closely with these kids and teens. Like, what have you observed? What changes have you seen in their own life, in their lives? Yeah, definitely. So I definitely think I'll go for different ages, right? So I'll give you the 3 different classes, right? There's little kids, the 3 to 6 year olds. With them, it's more of getting them structured, right? It's getting them to be able to know how to listen to somebody, getting them to know how to control their emotions, how to be aware of themselves, aware of their surroundings, to kind of get a conceptual idea of themselves, right? It's like, you're putting your kid in jiu-jitsu, but at a young age, it's very hard for kids to really develop these huge techniques that are super complicated and everything. Hence why it's like the focus at that young of age is being able to get them comfortable with themselves, right? It's being able to work with themselves, but also being able to work with a team. And that's where it kind of gets the martial arts benefit of it, right? It's you could go in any jiu-jitsu school and they can all teach you how to do the same cross collar choke, but it's like, what's the philosophy that you're putting behind what you're teaching that makes them believe and think everything around? For example, it's like, there's schools out there, I'm not bashing any schools, but it's like, man, they come in and they teach you how to fight and they show you all these techniques, and it's like, but they don't teach you, hey, don't ever go outside in the street and just use this on people, right? Like, for example, our philosophy behind it is, number one, what's the best fight? It's the one that never happens, right? Because if I teach you how to be aware of yourself, how to be aware of others in the situation you're in, you could stay out of 90% of things.
De-escalate.
Exactly.
Use your words to de-escalate the situation.
Exactly.
It's that actually reminds me of when I first started. In like the first couple of months, one of the first things I remember Professor Carlos saying was, Jiu Jitsu is not the art of going around and kicking everybody's butts. It's the art of learning how to not get your own butt kicked.
It's true. It's true.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
It's like,
and I never forgot that. Never forgot him saying that.
Man, that's the thing. Again, it's like the philosophy that he's putting behind his teachings.
Yeah.
You know, that's the biggest part, and that's definitely something I learned from Professor Carlos a lot. And I make sure, it's like, even sometimes, I'm a human being too. It's like sometimes I get upset at the kids because they're not listening or whatever it is. But it's like, you got to remember the big picture here, and you can't get upset with the little mistakes or little things they do, because again, we're here for the bigger picture for them. We're here to develop them into a young 3-year-old, into example for what Coach Joey is a young, confident, disciplined 13-year-old, that can now take care of himself. He can rely on himself, but also knows how to work with a team and lead others.
Yeah.
And especially say now we're past the 3 to 6-year-olds. Now we're in kind of the 7 to 10-year-olds. It's like, what are they learning? Right? It's like, again, same thing. They're getting the martial arts benefits. They're getting the philosophy, all that stuff of martial arts. But now at this age, now they're really developing how the real self-defense is, right? Kind of really recognizing when I am in a bad situation, really recognizing people's emotions, recognizing their own emotions, in the more in-depth sense. For example, like, everybody says, like, there's that intuition, right? It's like, oh, I feel that intuition. It's like, oh, I just have that feeling. And it's crazy. Like Professor Carlos has said, he said, man, jiu-jitsu over a lifetime will show you how to read people's souls, and I really, truly believe that. And with these kids, it's like, man, I have kids come up to me. They're like, hey, Coach Vince, you're looking kind of upset today. What's going on? And I'm like, man, it's like now they're able to notice these type of things, It's very unbelievable. And even with just the self-defense part, now they're really learning how to do hip throws. They're really learning how to put knee on bellies. And the confidence that displays in a human being is unfathomable. Like, a good example is someone is yelling at you, your boss, your teacher, whatever it is, and you're super stressed. You're like, oh my God, this is crazy. I can't believe this is happening. But then you get someone who goes to jiu-jitsu, and now someone's mounting them. They have someone on top of them trying to choke them, and they have to emotionally keep themselves calm, be able to mentally think themselves through. Now when they go back to school and their teacher's yelling at them, whatever it is, they don't take it as such a stressful situation, because there's nothing more stressful than someone on top of you, and you have to really try to think your way through.
Yeah. So why should children train jiu-jitsu?
I talk to people all the time, and I think everybody comes with their own reasons for jiu-jitsu, right? Like, for example, I want to be a professional competitor. I want to be able to overlook schools. I want to be able to do all this, right? But then you have someone who comes in and they're like, I just want to be here for the community. So people are, I just want to be here for the self-defense. And what I think that no matter what you come for, I think what martial arts brings you, and I think everybody needs to go through, is that you can't, it's hard for people to really learn life lessons without going through some sort of pain, going through some sort of trial and error. Because, for example, right, if you have someone sitting there their whole life in their house, they never go out, the life experience and stuff that they learn is going to be very few, because they haven't experienced much, But then you put someone in a martial arts, and now, again, like I said, someone mounts you, you have to think your way through, you got to keep yourself emotionally calm. That's hard things that you're going through, to be able to now apply that stuff in day-to-day life, which now gives you confidence, self-control, all these things, where I feel, especially nowadays, with just all the stuff on social media, people are involved in all that stuff. Once you get away from that and you put yourself in this situation where you're really going through hard stuff and you have to think about, man, how can I actually keep myself calm? How can I put this in day-to-day life? How can I apply this with my relationships, with my school, with my everything? I think that is something that no matter what you come for, that is something you're benefiting through, is going through something difficult and coming out in the end and knowing how to apply that in every single other aspect.
Now, we do have like a kids competition team.
Correct.
Can you kind of talk about the philosophy behind having kids compete?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, like, now that goes back to what I just said of, man, going through hard things, right? As a competitor, anybody that's ever fought and anybody that's ever been in a competition sense understands the stress, the emotions, the weight cutting, the fight camp. Every single little detail and thing that you have to do really does matter. And like there's always those jokes you see at those memes on Instagram where it's like, it's like, oh, when your boyfriend's cutting weight in the time and nobody wants to go around him, it's like, man, you know why? It's not an accident. It's because he's going through so much, and the girl's going through so much, and she's going through so much difficulty to achieve one goal. And now, once you put a kid in a situation where he really has to be on top of himself, he has to really be able to control his breathing to keep himself calm. He has to be on a good diet to make sure his weight. You put these little details in somebody. Now, for example, when they go to work, they're not going to miss these little details because they understand how every single little thing they do matters, right? It's like Professor Carlos always says, the devil lives in between the lines, and he hounds me all the time about this. Is the devil lives in between the lines, the devil lives in between the lines, but it's, for example, if you're looking at a facility, it's clean, you're going to be looking for the little things, like the little corners, the spider webs. You look if the mats are clean. You're going to look at the bathrooms have a little polish or so. But it's those little details that make the big picture make what the big picture is. And I think that's the same thing with kids competing. It's that you put them through all these little trials, and even if they come out successful or not, now they understand the ability that it's not just an easy way to be able to do something. You have to go through trial, you have to go through error to be able to come out on top. No matter if you win or you lose, now you understand what it means to be able to really put your heart and soul into something.
What would you tell adults or parents who are trying to push their children to win all the time at these competitions, who put so much pressure on these kids?
I would say it's not about the winning or losing. Like I said, it's the big picture, right? In the end, your kid could be winning world championship medals when he's 6 and does all this. Oh my God, he's a world champion when he's 12. He's won 12 world championships by the time he's 16. But at the end of the day, if he's just winning and he feels these emotions and these people are going around him and it's, oh my God, I feel this glory, at the end of the day, now you're solely focusing competition based on an outcome. You're not basing it, again, off of, wow, my son or daughter have really gone through the weight cut, the emotions, the yelling, all this stuff. And it kind of takes away from the big picture because it gets so drawn in something that it's very emotional. Like I won a tournament before and it's so emotional. You want to stay attached to that and it feels like you're riding a high. But at the end of the day, it's like you're always going to learn more if you look at the big picture, no matter the outcome. I'm gonna learn something no matter if I win. I'm gonna learn something no matter if I lose. But again, it's because of the mindset that you're in that you learn that. If I'm here in competition and my parents like, you have to win, you have to win, you have to win, and I lose, it's like, man, I'm gonna come back never wanting to compete again. And now you're missing out on all these benefits that can benefit you down the road. And my suggestion to parents is, man, be there to support your child. Be there emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, because it's not an easy thing for someone to go through. Any parent that competes and has a kid that also competes understands that. And that's my toughest thing for other parents is I try to tell them, just be there for them and everything. And it's hard because they're a parent, they want success, but not, I want to suggest not success in the short term, but we want success in the long term.
Yeah, it's more of a process than like a quick outcome.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I competed once, but I have assisted and I've worked at some of the competitions that we've hosted. And I have had a few observations about some of these kids. First of all, like the little kids. It's the cutest thing. Oh my god, to see the little 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds just bopping on out to the mat and like standing they're kind of like looking around like, okay, do we start now? Like, no, you gotta wait for the ref. Like you gotta and then just seeing them just as soon as you tell them they can start, they're like, okay, and then they just start. It's the cutest. Oh my god! And it's just they're just having so much fun, and they're so relaxed, and there's no the little ones, it's just they're just there for fun. They're just okay, and it's just, oh my god, it's the cutest. It's the cutest.
It is.
What I've observed though is the older we get, the older kids, the teens, the adults, it's the older we get, the more that we kind of lose that joy.
We do.
Just the joy of doing jiu-jitsu with your friends. And, I've overheard some parents at some of the competitions. To me, it almost seemed like they were scolding their kid because even if they won this match, they didn't, do this or that or the other right. And it's okay, but your kid is 8. Can you please just tell your kid that you're proud of them and, be like, hey, how do you feel? I hope you're proud of yourself. Man, it's not easy coming out here to compete. It just I just wish we wouldn't lose our joy in the art, the older that we get. I feel like, if you go to some of the adult competitions, everybody's just so nervous. They're so nervous.
I agree. And I think that's, it's very, for example, right? It's when you're a kid, I think it is a parent's job to make sure the kid is taken care of, happy, healthy, has his toys to play with, all this stuff, right? But and then now our world is based off of where a kid is. Man, well, we're having all this happiness, this joy, and now when we're older, we subconsciously make a switch, but we still want this happiness, this huge joy. But I think we're searching for it in the wrong way. I think that personally, my view is if we're not in a distraught, bad, whatever it is, man, we're in happiness. And I think that people base happiness off of, man, I'm only going to be happy if I get this win, right? I'm only going to be happy if my son does this. I'm only going to be happy if my daughter does that. But at the end of the day, you have to realize it's let's be happy with where we're at. Let's be happy with the progression we're making. Let's be happy with the moment we're in. Because again, it goes back to man, it's going to make someone at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old happy. The fact that they went through something so hard and they come out on the end, even if they win or lose, with you with a positive outlook, all right? With you being man, great job. I'm proud of you, but let's do it again. Not to put someone up on a pedestal if they win or not to put somebody down if they lose. I think it's the big picture of, hey, let's make sure that this happiness and this success can be felt at no matter what stage we can do, not just we can feel this happiness and this success just because we're in spot A.
Yeah. And I think also, I as an adult, I have the self-awareness to be able to look back at myself as a white belt, and, cringe a little bit because it's well, it's starting out, you don't know what you don't know. But then also just to kind of look back on my journey and just be wow, I've grown so much. And I'm hoping that as these kids get older, they can kind of look back on their own journeys and be wow, I've really grown so much, and then we get kids like Coach Joey, because he started as a kid and now he's a young teen and he's being a leader and, he's, like you said, earlier, he carries himself in a different way now. And so hopefully they can start developing that sort of self-awareness, oh yeah, this is growth, this is progress, I'm different than I used to be.
I agree. And it's man, it's what would you rather have? Would you rather have your son or daughter to win a couple of competitions but still is undisciplined, doesn't know how to take care of himself, still is hard to get up out of bed in the morning, all this stuff, or would you rather have someone who is losing a competition, but that's the first person you call if you need something. That's the first person you know that's going to be there. They get up in the morning, they discipline themselves, they do all this. It's like, man, at the end of the day, you're looking at one aspect of a tournament, but let's look at the aspect of life. You know, like, man, you might win in a jiu-jitsu competition, but if you can't stress manage yourself or you can't do whatever it is, and it's like, again, well, now you're looking at the small picture. You know, it's like, man, let's look at the big picture. Coach Joey, he is winning every tournament he's in, but I can guarantee you that if he lost, he would be carrying himself the same exact way, you know, because he realizes from being surrounded by a positive environment and positive influences that it's not about the tournament. It's about everything else that comes with jiu-jitsu that he's going to be able to apply until he's in his 70s and 80s.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like jiu-jitsu for life, and like that's also the name of the series, is like jiu-jitsu at any age. Like, you know, anybody can do jiu-jitsu. Anybody can do jiu-jitsu. I had something else and I was gonna ask or interject and I just forgot what it was. Oh well. So like it just came to me as you were talking. I was like, oh, I should say that, and then I lost it. It's all right. So
I love it, Steve.
So, whoops. Oh well. Okay, so okay, well, it's kind of half coming back. I was to ask the next question, and then maybe I'll get it back.
No,
so, what advice would you give to people, or even parents of younger children, who like are interested in jiu-jitsu, but might think that like, oh, maybe my child is too young, or you know.
Man, you know, and I give the same advice to adults that tell me they feel they're too old, right? It's like, listen, until you pull the trigger, you'll never know, because you're telling yourself a story that's making you feel a certain way, that's making you act and say, oh, he's too young or he's too old. But if you talk to somebody in the field that has experience, that works with that age group, and that has been around and seen, man, trust these people. You know, like I tell people all the time, like they come and like, oh, I want to do Krav Maga because I can do this stuff. And I explain to people like, man, I'm here because I want to find what the best martial art is. I want to find what I can really defend myself in a real life situation, what I can defend my family and friends and everybody I love. And man, I could definitely tell you from my point of perspective, I'm not here to BS people. You know, I want to be here to be straight up with people. And that's my advice is, man, reach out to a school, talk to them. If you don't feel like that's not the right fit for you, then don't pull the trigger, you know. But the moment you feel, man, maybe this is a school for me, just do it. And if it doesn't work, well, at least you pulled the trigger and you tried. Because the worst thing, it's that cheesy thought, it's that cheesy quote. It's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
But it's true, you know, and especially for a young man, imagine if I was too scared to go in, or imagine if Coach Joey was too scared to ever walk through the doors, or imagine if Professor Carlos, because of whatever reason, didn't go to jiu-jitsu. You know, it's like one decision can change your whole life.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it can. I just remembered that thing I was going to say.
Let's hear it.
So, because we were talking about, like, you know, you were mentioning something about, like, the kids who maybe, like, lose in competition, but then, like, the way that they you know, carry themselves, whether they act, behave, you know, treat others and stuff is you know, more of what we're looking for. And what I had thought was, you know, it's, you know, these kids, they, you know, like Coach Joey, like they develop into these, you know, confident, self-assured young people, I think also because we are making sure that they know that their value is always there, no matter what the outcome of a competition. You know, like their value as a human doesn't go up or down whether they win or lose a competition. Like they're always valuable, you know. And like we talk about competitions, I know, like at school and stuff, and you know, they'll say if you win, that's great, you know, but also it's like it's not everything, because okay, well, looking in like how did you get there, you know. And then if you don't win, it's like, okay, that's fine, like, you know, the world's not gonna end. Okay, now you know where the holes in your game are, just work on those, you know. So I mean, obviously, like, we're proud of people's accomplishments and stuff, but like their value as a human is always the same.
Always. It's like, why would I base someone, for example, like I'm going to throw a crazy name like Elon Musk, right? Like, man, I guarantee he makes mistakes all the time, but he's reached great success because of his mistakes, because of stuff that he's done. Look at Professor Carlos. He's made millions of mistakes. I've made millions of mistakes. But, it's like if I base my value off of the mistakes I made, then I'm just going to sit here and now I'm basing myself off of my mistakes. And it's like, we can do that. We can sit here and base each other off of our mistakes, but it's like, man, what outcome are we going to get from that? It's what is the goal? If the goal is to sit here and, again, to sit in this state where I got to feel bad for myself because I lost, or my parents don't feel like that, it's like, man, again, it's not the big picture. It's not the goal. I didn't join jiu-jitsu, or I didn't have kids do jiu-jitsu and all this stuff and coach kids just to have them devalue themselves just because of one loss in their life.
Yeah. Well, I think also that's a really important philosophy or mindset for kids to develop at a young age, because I mean, like, I feel like I know better than anybody. Like, the older you get and like other stuff happens and like maybe you have, like I do, I have 2 mood disorders. And so it's just like, it's really easy to get stuck in that kind of like hanging up on your mistakes and stuff and feeling like your value as a human is going up and down. But I think it's really important, and I'm really glad that we are, teaching these kids this philosophy that like you are valuable as a human. You have potential to grow. You have the things you do and say affect not just yourself, but also other people, and like we can build a community together. And doing that from a young age, like I'm really proud of the programs that we have for these kids and the teens too.
Yes, well.
Well, because then, like, kind of jumping off of that, I guess piggybacking off of that, like we've got these kids like as the ambassadors, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah. So, we have like, for example, right? There's the ambassadors program. It's like, what is the ambassadors program? It's for people to have a sponsorship that really dedicate themselves fully to jiu-jitsu, that they dedicate themselves fully to Gracie Barra, to the school, to the philosophy. For example, like I was the first ever ambassador of the whole state of Illinois. And I can tell you, like, from my experience, man, it's like, for example, people think they get their black belt now that they get to sit down and relax. They're like, yeah, I'm a black belt. It's like,
that's
no.
when the work really begins.
That's when the work really begins.
Yeah.
It's like when I became the ambassador, I really realized, like, man, that's when the work really begins. Because I realized, like, I am an influence to people. Mm-hmm. Everything I do and I say matters. Yeah. And it's whether I notice it or not. And I have to make sure I carry myself around with that at all times. I can't be going to the store acting like a fool or doing something acting like a fool, because again, I stand for something. I stand for something that's much bigger than myself, that was created for people like me, but created by someone that has been around for so long, that understands the importance of what this will bring to the world and the people. And I can't have my personal views or whatever kind of come in on that and put it one way or the other. It's like, no, this man has a vision. He's seen it. It's the positive, and there's for people like me to come in and be like, man, I believe this vision. I believe the positivity it'll bring to not just myself and my relationships, but to everybody else. And it's a very, very important program, especially, man, there's influences all around with drugs or this or alcohol, whatever it is, and it's like there's very few people that are real positive influences, and even the people that are positive influences are really based on one type of thing. Like, for example, I love Jocko Willink, I love David Goggins, and I watch their stuff all the time, but unless some of the stuff they say, it's like you kind of have to be a mature adult to really understand some of that stuff. And I want to be an ambassador like they are, but I want to be an ambassador for kids. I want to be an ambassador for young kids that really kind of need that guidance, that kind of really need that positive influence in their lives, and maybe don't have it at home or don't have it at school. And it's like, man, now you realize of an importance of, man, this kid doesn't have a positive influence or doesn't know doesn't have something to really learn something from in a way that's going to benefit him in his life positively. But now he comes to me, and I have to realize the position I'm in and the way I can affect these kids, that now it's going to affect them the rest of their lives. I can't be in this position treating it just like, oh yeah, it's whatever, it is what it is. But because it's like, no, at the end of the day, no matter how I act, I'm put in a position where what I say and what I do is going to affect people in a positive or negative way.
Well, and aren't we also kind of encouraging these kids as they grow up to be this kind of ambassador to their classmates, to their friends, to like their peers and stuff like that? I mean, even though like the technical GB ambassador, like you've just described with yourself, you are like sponsored by Gracie Bot, you know, this kind of stuff, but like these kids can still promote the values and be kind of that good friend, be that good person,
100%.
and spread that positive energy, you know, be that positive influence, like now, like in just wherever they're at, you know, at their school or whatever.
I agree, because it's like, man, especially when you look at someone that's in that position. Like, for example, for me, it's Professor Carlson. I look at Professor Carlson, I'm like, oh, man, I'd love to be in that position. It's probably super easy. He's probably done all that, you know? And, like, the more and more I climb on that mountain, it's like, man, I realize the more I climb, you know, the colder it gets, you know? And it's definitely a rough journey, but now I'm being able to pave that path for anybody that's behind me also climbing the mountain, you
and
know?
they can walk in your footsteps.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's why I have to realize if I like it or not, like, what I do really does matter.
It does. Yeah, and I think also like with these kids and stuff that we teach them, you know, that what they do also matters too, you
100%.
know. And I think that's really important for these kids, you know, just for these kids to learn. Like I feel like they don't always get that kind of positive reinforcement from wherever they're at sometimes. So it's good. I just really am glad that we do that for them. Because I just feel so, because there's some kids that I've seen, you know, like I'm not a kids coach, you know, but I do see the kids sometimes, and like even just like seeing them like at one competition, you know, because I'm working at the Compnet or whatever, and then 4 months later or whatever, seeing them at the next Compnet and just like seeing I'm just like, oh my god, look at you,
It's awesome.
look at you, like oh my god, it just fills my heart with so much joy, you know, to see these kids like that. And I'm just so glad that we have the kids program, you know, and that we've spent so much time and effort to like develop it into what it is. So
yeah, 100% agree, man. You know, like I think my personal goal, and I think it's Professor Carlos's as well. It's like, and all the coaches at the school, it's like we wanna build that Coach Vince voice or Professor Carlos voice in their own heads. You know, so now once they're older adults, like we're saying, right, we're talking about at jiu-jitsu, but it's like, man, again, we're going back to life. It's like we want to be able to have that Coach Vince voice, Professor Carlos voice in the back of our head at all times, reinforcing us. And like I can tell you personally, man, I walk around, Professor Carlos is talking to me all day long. He is talking to me all day long in my head. You know, every decision I make, everything I do, I'm like, man, what will Professor Carlos think? What will Professor Carlos say? You know, but I can tell you, like, man, it saved me a lot of times from making bad decisions, or it saved me a lot of times from being able to pull myself out of situations or whatever it is, you know. And I realize it's like, man, he always tells me the first year I went to Pan Am's in 2020 by myself, I didn't have a coach. I was like, are you not coming with? And he was like, if you get into an altercation on the street and you're in an alley, are you going to be looking for me to coach you? And I was like, oh, yeah, good point. And he's like, man, my goal for you is to be able to build that Professor Carlos voice in your head, so now you can walk around with the same confidence that I'm right behind you, knowing that you've built that whole entire thing.
Yeah, and just kind of knowing that, like, that these kids, that they have people like you know, people like Professor, people like all the other professors we had, you know, the other coaches, and these, like, positive, you know, like mentor type of figures who can feed them good things for their mind and spirit, and you know, they can practice good things for their bodies too. It's just, yeah, I don't know, I kind of lost my train of thought, but basically, like, I'm just glad that we have that, you know. And I think it's just so important for these kids, you know.
It's very important, you know, like,
to help develop them as people.
I agree.
You know? And
it's like the power that jiu-jitsu would bring to everybody. Man, imagine if everybody was walking around here with jiu-jitsu. It'd be unbelievable. So many things. Like, people walk around sometimes angry or whatever it is, and it's like, man, I think if everybody did jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu, what it brings is, to everybody that does it, no matter, again, what their goal is, it brings them physical benefits. They're physically moving. They're getting their body active, their blood flowing, their heart rate up, their breathing going. Emotionally, again, when you're sparring, you have to somehow keep yourself emotionally calm, whether that's with breathing, that's with mental chess, whatever that is for you.
Mental chess, yeah.
You know, and then you figured out yourself emotionally. Now it's mentally. I have to know how to think through this situation. What is she going to do? What is he going to do if I do this? You know, and spiritually, it's acceptance that if I do this and it goes wrong, can I accept that?
Yeah.
You know, can I accept that if stuff goes wrong, I can now find another way out? You know, and I think if every single human being had those physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual benefits, I think that people would walk around day to day with more of a positive outlook on life. I think people would be a lot happier. And I think people just in general would just interact with the world in a lot more positive way.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, we can't necessarily force people to change, but we can at least forge a better path for those who are coming after us, you know?
100% agree.
So, yay. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you, Stace.
Now, before we kind of end things here, like, where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, only thing I really use is my Instagram. It is Vincent Samartano GB. You can find me on there. I got a little picture of me in my little sombrero hat.
Little hat.
So that's where you guys can find me. And man, GB Downers Grove. Definitely, if anybody ever is interested, just wants to have a conversation, please feel free to talk.
And I'll put those Instagram handles in the description of this episode.
Awesome. I love it.
Yay.
I appreciate you, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast, give it a rating, and leave me a review. If you have any questions for me, or if there's something you want me to talk about, then DM me on Instagram at jujiteraspodcast or email me at jujiteraspodcast@gmail.com. These will all be linked in the show notes below. See you next time.